Hey there. Yep, I'll get it together here in just a second. Okay. Hi. What are we up to? Wednesday. Hope you're doing okay today. Gosh, if you haven't had a chance to check into your breath today, I want to invite you to join me in exhaling all the stress and the concerns and the worry and the fear and the anxiety and the panic and the chaos. Just and inhale a nice slow breath. See if you can move it past your lung area, not by force. It may take a few breaths. It may take a few times to practice to bring your breath beyond your upper chest, beyond your lungs, and down into your belly. It's a really good time to remember, even with Post-it notes, to breathe. Shortness of breath, because the breath stays in the upper chest and doesn't ever really have a chance to slow down, so that we can bring it down into the belly today. Because as we know, the breath is one of the most important things that tells the nervous system there is no charging elephant. And there's a lot going on again today that can cause us to consciously or unconsciously be moving into a fearful and anxious state. I mean, when you have the leader of the United States playing this kind of a game with its people, saying, I may not, nobody really knows, and it has to do with participating in a war, it's intended to cause fear. And in the new design model, it's not that we don't feel fear. However, we've developed an awareness of what it feels like so that when we begin to feel it, we can stop what we're doing, take a moment, return to our breath, slow it down, and bring it down so that we communicate to our brain that there's no charging elephant. And it relaxes the nervous system. It slows down the rush of adrenaline and cortisol and all of those hormones that were not meant to run 24/7, but oftentimes these days are running way beyond their initial intention, okay? I wanted to come on today and share with you a couple of thoughts I have. As usual, there are many thoughts I'm having all at the same time. But of course, I'm thinking about what's happening in the Middle East. And of course, in my filters, it reminds me of the old design model. War is the ultimate act that comes out of the old design model that is built on separation. If you want to distill it down to an act of violence, and war is an amplified version of that, that's fine, that's true. However, what's important today is understanding that it's built upon a belief that says, I am separate from you. It's built upon a belief that says, I am not you. Therefore, what I do to you, I am not doing to myself. Now, in the new design model, we know that that's not true. We believe in the interconnectivity of all of life. And that's why eventually, as you make the move from the old design model into the new design model, as your belief system begins to change, either rapidly or over time, and you yourself move out of separation into oneness, you have this awakening to the interconnectivity of all life. Things like war no longer live in your consciousness. They no longer live in your heart, because you see each and every person as a speck of you. You understand that back behind the appearance of skin and bones and skin color and all the things that seemingly make us different, there's one thing happening. There's one manufacturer producing all of us. And so it's just very interesting to measure the shift in the collective consciousness today as it relates to the rhetoric that is going on now about the Middle East and the U.S. involvement in that war, which is horrific. Any war and every war is. And there's certainly wars going on all over the planet right now. However, we know what this is. Those of us who are awakening, those of us who believe they are awakened, those of us who are making the shift from the old design model into the new design model, those of us who are realizing that the way it's been is no longer working. It's not working for us. It's not working for our kids, our families, our coworkers, our neighbors. It's not working for our brothers and sisters anymore. And we are seeking something else. And it's very fascinating to be at this point right now. You know, war has been this patriotic trigger, right? Because we have been caught up in the trance of separation, myself included. Not so much now, and certainly not for many, many years, but I've been there. But as I've awakened, that has been one of the areas that I have moved out of, because you can't live in oneness and also believe in war. It's not possible. And so it's just interesting to take the temperature now of the collective consciousness around this idea of war, which has been this unifying patriotic gesture that has often unified our nation, others perhaps as well, but I'll just talk about our nation because we believe in an enemy that has attacked us. And now we have to fight, we have to rally together and fight the enemy, and of course, win. And so in the midst of this massive, massive shift in consciousness, because make no mistake about it, we are in not just an evolution of consciousness, we're in a revolution of consciousness. I always bring it back to myself. Because as much as I can point outward and say, I don't do war anymore, I live in a state of oneness and all that I've just spoken about, ultimately, I must, and I do, take a fine-tooth comb through my own consciousness, my own belief system, and for sure my own heart to see where, if anywhere, I am still at war with myself. And I've done a lot of work in the heart. I've done a lot of heart work. I've done a lot of forgiveness work. So I'm cognitive about the purification of my heart center. However, where I often do still have to play a very active role of the peacekeeper is in my mind. Because I often still have, which is the way it is, I mean, the momentum of the old design model is still very active in my own experience, even though I am living hour by hour in the new design model, even though I'm in a real-time vision that reveals itself to me in real time, the momentum of the old design model is still very much there. It's still fighting for relevance. And I understand that now. So my approach to it has changed over time. But why I wanted to bring this to you today is not so much what's going on in the outer world, but as always, what's going on in our inner life. Because the cultural shift that we're in, make no mistake about it, is not just external. In fact, the external shift is the last place. In other words, the plant is the last place of the experience. First, there's the seed, the cause. Then there's the soil, the environment that the seed is in. And then, of course, there's the outcome, the growth. And so if you're using your time in any way to, considering what's going on in the outer world and the headlines and what he'll do, I want to invite you to join me in the compassionate process of turning towards yourself and seeing if there's any areas within yourself where you are still in separation from yourself. Where might you still be blaming yourself? And today, can you bring compassion to yourself and make a commitment to let that go and choose to love yourself and know that the self that you were at that time truly did the best that they could do? How do we know that? Because that's what you did. And it's only from hindsight and the process of growth that that choice probably has brought to you that you're able to look back with compassion. So where might you have stuck unforgiveness to yourself? And oftentimes the mind is the one that keeps us hostage. The mind always uses the reference point of the past to inform it. It has no other choice. The mind uses the past as its reference point to everything. And that's why it's so important to do the work of the heart right now, today, so that we can purge all of that stuck energy that keeps us at war with ourselves. And that's a place to start. Forgive yourself. You did the best you could. And bring compassion to the mind that constantly tells you that's not true. Because that's what the mind will do. The heart will say, I forgive you. It's okay. You did the best you could. It's over. It's in the past. We're going to move over. And then the mind says, oh, but wait a minute. And it brings its argument to the table. So you have to have the strength of the heart to not only have compassion for when the mind does that, but to have enough discipline and strength to override it. And I do that by saying, I put my hand on my heart and I say to my mind, I hear you. I know that's your argument. I know that you're with that argument 100%. I used to be too, but we're not going that way anymore. I talk to myself all the time because I want to bring compassion to the parts of me that are still stuck in the old way of thinking about me and the way I've lived my life. So where are you at war with yourself in your heart? Do you have stuck energy around the things you've done? Have you blamed yourself still for something that happened? Today's a good day to let that go and forgive yourself. Where in your mind are you warring with yourself? It's unbelievable. I tell you, honestly, the best thing you could do with your time is to master how your mind works. Because once you understand how your mind works, and once you understand that the mind uses the past as a reference point, it is a game changer. Whereas your heart knows your future. Your heart knows the next hour. Your heart knows this afternoon. Your heart knows tomorrow. And this is why it's so important to purge anything and everything internally that keeps us in separation to our own self. And that is what the old design model is all about. That's what the old design model intended for us. Keeps us at war with ourselves. Why? Because once you heal all that inner strife, once you just let it go, once you just cut the cords of the past and say, it's over, I'm here now, what am I going to do today? Guess what happens? You have a resurgence of your inner power. All the space, all the energy, all the emotional and spiritual and mental energy and effort it takes to keep you separate from yourself comes back to you. I mean, it's so emotional right now just sharing this with you because this is the awakening. This is what the old design model can no longer do, which is to keep us separate from our power. For some, it's a powerful experience and off you go. For others, it doesn't feel right because we're not used to it. And just because something doesn't feel good, even though something doesn't feel right, it doesn't mean it's not for you. And so I want to invite you to stay with the discomfort that you may feel as you reconnect with your power, as you reconnect with your whole self, and know that we're all going through this right now. Because, as I said, this cultural shift is as much about a personal shift as it is about everything else that we're seeing. Because look, I know we hear the word collapse a lot. And I know we hear the phrase collapse of systems and structures a lot. But that's what's happening. We are inside the collapse of not just any system, but the system that we've built our lives upon that no longer works. I personally believe that it cannot be fixed from the inside out. If that's your belief and that's where your work is, I honor it. However, my work is the new design for living. I'm here to express an infrastructure that can allow us to use this time right now today to gather and sow the seeds of the new way, to use everything that's happening, including the drums of war, as a reference point to what we want. Sometimes you have to be in what you don't want or don't like to know what you do want and what you do like. And that's great. Contrast is very, very informative. But I am here now to sow the seeds with whomever it is that is ready to join me in designing the new way. And I had this massive experience last night around imagination. I've talked about imagination a lot over the last several years. I had a great awakening of the imagination. But last night, I had an up-leveling. Last night I felt like, and it's still very fresh, so it's still very emotional, which is okay, because that's how I know I'm touching my greater power. But I had this realization because I was, watching some videos and reminding myself, okay, that which I see, that vision that is the new design for living, a world that works for everyone, a world that is anchored out of love and oneness and peace. The imagination is the how. In other words, we often hear people say now, it's already done. Your future self, another timeline, right? The quantum field where every possibility and every potential exists in its energetic template. And then we are endowed with various faculties to be co-creators of what we personally experienced. And what I realized last night is that being able to imagine, especially right now, where we are being bombarded with the momentum of the old design model and the growth of its seeds, it is vitally important to be able to turn away and turn towards yourself. It's vitally important for me right now to gather community so we can literally sit together, whether it's in this way, across the table, it doesn't matter, but that we start to use our imagination and start with maybe what's happening that we don't want anymore, and then be much more active, deliberate, and disciplined in using our imagination, which can help us coalesce around and create a mold that can give this field a mold that it can fill with substance that can then become form. I hope that makes sense to you in some way. And thank you everybody for watching. So this is the practice. This is the practice, because when I want to turn away from what's happening, I often have resistance. No, that's not right. You shouldn't do that. What kind of citizen, person are you? You're supposed to. So it takes a reminder to myself, yes, however, I am here to run alongside what's collapsing and use it as a reference point to rebuild, to build anew. Because I am not one of the people that believes that this is going to be fixed from the inside of it. It's over. And it should be over because it doesn't work anymore. We don't want it anymore. However, the mind goes, well, then what is? And, where do we go now if we leave this? And that's what the new design for living offers us, and offers us a community where together we can use our imagination, which is the greatest faculty we have right now, to move us from what has been to what we seek. And so I am, I met somebody for coffee today. Somebody I love deeply, has been a business collaborator for many years, my web designer. She knows me very well. And she said something to me that really was yet another 2x4 across the head. I don't think I need any more. That's clearly the last one. But she said to me, you're so fearless in every area of your life, and yet you hold back in this one area of your content. And she said, if you only were as fearless there. And so I've come home and I've turned this camera on to be fearless with you. And so I'm here to build community. You're going to be seeing some spontaneous things that aren't going to be perfect, like my radio career said it should be. But we're in messy times. But I know one thing about messy times. That's where the gold is. Inside the chrysalis, the mush and the mess of the caterpillar becoming the butterfly, what's inside there? The cells and the seeds of what is yet to be. So if any of this resonates with you, please share in the comments. Let me know if you're interested in joining this movement that is the new design for living. And I'll just stay in touch in the ways that I do. Take super good care of yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. You're doing the best that you could. And you're doing the best that you can. All right, so much love.